The alien vampire woman's bite was fatal, but this time it brought the human warrior back to life. The city of Eldrith had always been a place where the sun didn't rise in the traditional sense. It was more like the sky had decided to take a nap, leaving behind a permanent dusk that wrapped itself around the crumbling spires of the once proud metropolis. The air, thick with the smell of burnt ozone and machinery, hummed constantly, as though the very bones of the city were still alive and trying to keep going, even when everything else had stopped. The last remnants of humanity scattered through the darkened streets, clinging to whatever scrap of existence they could hold on to. Cal stood at the edge of the old war zone, his boots sinking slightly into the dirt beneath him. The battlefield was quiet now, eerily quiet. His hand hovered over the hilt of his blade, instinctively ready to unsheath it should anything move. His breath came out in soft puffs, a reminder that he was still alive. Or at least, that's what he liked to think. Truth was, he didn't feel alive anymore. Not fully, not after everything that had happened. The rebellion had failed. The aliens had invaded, wiped out nearly every stronghold. His comrades had fallen one by one, and all Cale had left was this, an endless game of survival. He had once been a proud warrior, the best in his unit. Now, he was just a remnant, a ghost wandering through a ghost city. He had no purpose anymore, not in the way he used to understand it, and yet he couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. A soft rustle in the shadows snapped his attention back to the present. He stiffened, drawing his blade in one swift motion, the metal gleaming faintly in the dim light. "Easy there," a voice purred from the darkness. Kyle's heart skipped a beat, but his expression remained cold. He had been trained to not react, to not let anything catch him off guard. Still, this was different. Out of the gloom stepped a figure, tall, elegant, and impossibly graceful. She looked human at first glance, her long, flowing hair catching the dim glow of a distant streetlight. But there was something about her that didn't belong. Her ears, long and sharp like the tips of knives, were the first giveaway. They twitched slightly as she took a step closer, a predator's instinct at work. Her skin was pale, almost luminescent, as though the darkness itself couldn't quite touch her. Her smile revealed sharp, predatory fangs. "Nice weapon," she said, her voice a soft hum, the kind that made your skin prickle. "But I don't think you'll need it tonight." Cal didn't lower his blade. "Who are you?" The woman, alien, vampire, whatever she was, tilted her head as though considering the question. "Name's Syra. I'm not from around here, obviously. I tend to prefer more secluded spots." She grinned, showing more of those unsettling teeth. "But you found me, so, well, I suppose that's something." Cal kept his distance, watching her carefully. He had seen creatures like her before. Vampires, mutants, all manner of things that came through the rifts in the fabric of space. She was no different, and yet everything about her screamed danger. "And what exactly do you want?" he asked, his voice low. Syra took a step closer, the air around her seeming to thrum with an energy he couldn't quite place. "What do I want?" she mused, her smile widening. "What does anyone want? Power, control, survival?" She paused, her gaze flicking over him, assessing. "You've been surviving, haven't you? For how long now?" Cal's grip tightened on his blade, but he didn't answer. Instead, he shifted his stance, ready to strike if needed. "Tell me, warrior," she continued, unfazed by his tension, "do you ever wonder why you're still here? Why you've managed to survive when everyone else has fallen?" Her eyes gleamed in the half-light, like twin moons rising over a desolate world. "There's a reason for that, you know." He could feel it then, the strange pull in the air around them. It was subtle, like a magnetic force, pulling at him from the inside. He narrowed his eyes, confused and disturbed by the sensation. It wasn't just that she was powerful, it was something else, something more. "You're not the first to wonder," she said with a soft chuckle, as though reading his mind. "But you're the first to actually meet me." Before Cale could react, she was upon him, faster than he could track, her body a blur of motion. She struck with such precision, her fangs sinking deep into the flesh of his neck before he could even raise his blade. The pain was sharp, excruciating, as if every nerve in his body was screaming in protest. He gasped, his vision blurring, his legs buckling beneath him. His heart hammered in his chest, a final desperate rhythm as his life began to slip away. But then, something strange happened. Instead of fading into darkness, he felt a sudden surge, raw and violent. His body, no longer his own, thrummed with a terrible energy. His limbs stiffened, his muscles tensed, and his heart, which should have stopped, kept beating. Sira pulled back, her lips stained with his blood. She watched him with a mixture of amusement and something darker, something more expectant. "You're mine now," she whispered, her voice almost affectionate, though there was nothing kind about it. Kale blinked, disoriented, still on his knees. He could feel the air shifting around him, thickening, charging with something dark and ancient. His head swam as the world seemed to tilt, to warp, and through it all, that hunger, that insatiable hunger pulsed through his veins. It was alien, foreign, but undeniably his now. Sarah's eyes glinted in the dim light, and she stood, her long, elegant figure outlined against the broken skyline. "Welcome to the new world," she said, her voice a soft melody that was anything but comforting. "Now, let's see if you can survive this one." Kyle didn't respond. His gaze remained locked on her, his thoughts a whirlwind. His mind was awash with confusion, fear, and something else. Something he couldn't name. He had been brought back, but not in the way he had expected. Not as a man, not as a soldier, something else entirely. The hunger twisted in his chest, and for the first time in a long while, Kale felt alive, and it terrified him. "So," Sierra said, taking a casual step back, "how does it feel to be reborn, warrior?" Kale's lips parted, but no words came out. Instead, his throat burned with a new, strange need. "You'll get used to it," Sarah said, her voice almost sweet, like a lullaby that promised only nightmares. Kyle stumbled to his feet, the world spinning in a way he had never experienced before. His legs felt like they belonged to someone else, stiff and uncooperative, but strong. The hunger was there, gnawing at him like a beast in his gut, its sharp teeth scraping against the walls of his insides. He wanted to scream, to tear something apart, to fight, but his body wouldn't let him. He was too aware of it now, this strange new power pulsing through his veins, as if the universe had decided that his body was nothing more than a vessel to carry something far older and darker than him. He tried to focus on something, anything that could bring him back to his senses, but his mind kept drifting, pulled towards that insatiable feeling, the need to feed, to consume, to devour. His breath hitched as his gaze flickered toward Sira, standing with that same eerie grace, watching him like a predator eyeing its prey. "You're not dead," she said, almost as if she were making a note of it for later. "Yet." Kyle clenched his fists, trying to push the panic down. "What did you do to me?" Her smile was slow, calculating. "I did what needed to be done. You were on the edge, warrior. You were dying." She took a step forward, her presence pulling at him like a magnet. "I gave you a chance to survive, to thrive." The words echoed in his head, but they didn't make sense. Nothing made sense anymore. He opened his mouth to speak, but all that came out was a growl, deep and primal, something that felt foreign to him, like an instinct he couldn't suppress. Syra's eyes glimmered, and she tilted her head, watching him with a mix of amusement and something else. Satisfaction, maybe. "The hunger's strong, I see. Don't worry, it'll settle in time. You'll learn to control it." Control it? He wanted to laugh, but his throat was dry, his mind still foggy from the strange transformation that had taken place. Control? It feels like it's tearing me apart. Syra raised an eyebrow. "Welcome to immortality, warrior. You'll find that everything is a little more intense now. Your senses are sharper. Your strength, your speed, they're all heightened. And yes, the hunger. That's part of the package deal." Cal glanced at his hands. They looked the same, yet different, as if they belonged to someone else entirely. Stronger, faster. "Immortality," he repeated, the word tasting strange in his mouth. Is that what this is? A curse? Some kind of gift? Syra chuckled, though the sound was dark. Call it whatever you like. A curse, a blessing. It's all the same in the end. The question is, warrior, can you live with it? I didn't ask for this, Kale growled, stepping back. His mind was racing. I didn't ask for any of it. I was just doing my job. I was fighting for something bigger than me. And now, she asked, her voice a quiet murmur that reverberated in his mind. What will you fight for now? Kale didn't answer. He didn't know. The hunger was growing inside him again, clawing at his thoughts, and it took everything in him to keep himself grounded. He could feel his teeth lengthening, his body tensing as though something deep within him was waking up, something dark and hungry. You need to feed, Syra said, as though reading his thoughts. You're still weak. Trust me, you'll feel better after you do. Kyle frowned. Feed on what? Syra's smile widened. On anything you can find. Anything? Kale's voice was tight. You mean people? Ah, there's that hesitation. She sounded almost amused. Yes, people, but don't worry. I'm not asking you to tear anyone apart just yet. We'll start small. A little test, if you will. Cal felt his stomach churn. He had always been a soldier. He had fought for the greater good, for humanity's survival. Now he was supposed to feed on the very people he had once sworn to protect. He could feel the dark pull of the power Syra had bestowed on him. It was seductive, undeniable. The need to satisfy the gnawing hunger was all-consuming. He shook his head. I'm not some monster. Syra didn't seem bothered by his resistance. Oh, but you are. Or at least you will be. The question is whether or not you accept it. Do you fight it, or do you embrace what you've become? Kyle's hands tightened into fists. He wanted to lash out, to destroy something, but he couldn't. Not yet. Not until he understood what he had become. I don't know if I can do this. You'll have to, Syra replied, because whether you like it or not, there's no going back. The hunger will follow you wherever you go, and it will only grow stronger. You'll either learn to control it, or it will control you. A shiver ran down Kale's spine. The words hung in the air, heavy with truth and threat. He had no idea what Syra had made him into, but he knew one thing for sure. His life as he had known it was over. What now? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Syra shrugged, the movement so fluid it was almost like she was made of liquid. Now we train. I'll show you how to harness what you've become. We'll start with the basics. Feeding, controlling your strength, your speed. You'll need all of it. Trust me, warrior, the world you once knew is gone. This new world, our world, is full of monsters, and we'll need to be stronger than them. She turned and began to walk away, her long form disappearing into the darkened alley, leaving Kyle standing there in the middle of the wreckage. His mind was spinning. He felt like he was being dragged along, like some helpless puppet. Come on, Syra called over her shoulder. We'll start small. A little walk. You'll see. Kyle hesitated for a moment, but something inside him, a strange, almost unnatural urge, pushed him to follow. He wasn't sure where this was going, but for the first time since everything fell apart, he felt something stirring inside him that wasn't just hunger. It was a desire to understand what had happened to him, to figure out what kind of power he now possessed. So he walked, his feet carrying him behind Syra, deeper into the night and deeper into whatever strange new fate had been chosen for him. The city's quiet hum was almost comforting as Kale followed Syra through the twisting back alleys of Eldrith. His footsteps echoed against the ruined walls, a sound that didn't belong in a place so full of ghosts. But the ghosts weren't what worried him anymore. No, it was the fact that he was one of them now, a ghost in his own right. Where are we going? Kyle asked, his voice more steady than he felt. The hunger gnawed at the edges of his thoughts, like a dog tugging at its leash, waiting for permission to pounce. Training, Syra replied, her voice low and calm, like a serpent guiding a lost lamb. The sooner you understand what you've become, the sooner you can stop pretending to be human. He clenched his jaw. I never said I wanted to be this. You didn't have a choice, she said, as though it were the most obvious thing in the world. Now stop being so dramatic. Trust me, you'll get the hang of it. Eventually. Cal was about to protest again when they reached an old rusted door. It was part of a building that had long since crumbled in the chaos of the war. One of the old research labs that had once been at the cutting edge of humanity's war efforts. Now it was nothing more than a forgotten relic, and it smelled like it too. Decay, dampness, and something sharper beneath it. Syra pushed the door open with a flick of her wrist, and the rusty hinges squealed in protest. Inside, the air was cooler, the walls lined with strange machinery. Most of it old, outdated, and apparently half forgotten. But some of it looked newer, more functional. "What is this place?" Kale asked, looking around. "Where we're going to start your training," Syra said, tapping one of the devices with a long finger. "This is a laboratory of sorts, a place where I learned everything I needed to know about surviving as I do. And now you'll learn too." Kyle eyed the equipment, feeling a weird sense of unease. Some of it looked like it could be useful, but there were others that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. This was an alien world now, and he was no longer sure what was dangerous and what wasn't. "You've got your hunger under control," she said, stepping closer to him. "Now let's see how well you handle your new strength." Cal barely had time to register what she meant before she shoved him toward one of the large glass containers on the far wall. Inside, a thick, viscous liquid swirled, catching the low light from the ceiling. Kyle frowned. "What is that?" he asked, his voice tight. "Food," Syra said, smiling. "For your kind." Cal's stomach clenched at the word. Food. Was that what this was? Some kind of feeding ground? He felt that gnawing hunger again, stronger now, rising from deep within him. His senses sharpened, his body reacting to the scent in the air. But the pull wasn't quite right. The liquid inside the container didn't smell like blood. Not quite. It was thicker, richer, like some kind of nutrient paste. "I'm not drinking that," Kale said quickly, taking a step back. Syra cocked an eyebrow. "You don't have much of a choice. This is how you survive now. You'll learn to appreciate it." Before Kale could protest further, she stepped forward, pressing a button on the console beside the container. The glass door slid open with a hiss, and something inside stirred. A sleek, insectoid creature, its limbs twitching as if it had been asleep, then suddenly aware of its surroundings. Its mandibles clattered together as it jerked forward, coming into contact with the nutrient-filled liquid. Kyle stared, wide-eyed. "What the hell is that?" "Something you'll be eating," Syra said, her tone casual. "A little on the exotic side, but it does the trick. You'll get used to it, eventually." "Eventually?" Kyle muttered, the words tasting strange on his tongue. He wasn't sure what disturbed him more, the thought of consuming something so alien, or the way Syra said it, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Enough standing around," Syra said, her voice suddenly sharp. "You need to feed, warrior, unless you want to risk starving. Your body won't last long if you don't." Kale hesitated. He didn't want to admit it, but the hunger was gnawing at him now, twisting his insides, making it hard to think clearly. He was desperate. His thoughts felt slow, disconnected from his own mind, as though the dark power Syra had awakened within him was trying to take over. The craving was all-consuming. "I'll show you how it's done," Syra said, sensing his hesitation. She stepped to the side, approaching the creature in the tank with slow, deliberate steps. She didn't even hesitate as she reached into the tank and drew the insectoid creature out. With one swift movement, she pierced its flesh with a sharp nail, and the creature's body went limp in her hands. Kyle's stomach lurched. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the grotesque scene. This was wrong. This was alien. "Come on, Kyle," Syra said, turning to face him, blood dripping from her fingers, though she seemed unfazed by it. "You can either keep fighting it, or you can accept it. This is what we are now. You can't change that. You'll need this if you're going to stay alive." Kyle swallowed hard. His body ached with hunger, his muscles twitching with an almost painful intensity. The thought of feeding on something like that, it was unthinkable. But the hunger inside him didn't care. It pushed at his thoughts, making them blur. He clenched his jaw and stepped forward, drawn by an instinct he didn't fully understand. Syra observed him silently as he approached the tank. She didn't say a word, just watched him as he reached into the container, his fingers trembling. The moment his hand closed around the creature's body, he felt it. The warmth, the pulse, the strange alien energy that radiated from it. He didn't know why, but he was certain that once he tasted it, everything would change. He would either lose himself completely to this hunger, or he would learn to control it. With a deep breath, he tore into the creature's flesh, the strange, viscous substance filling his mouth. At first it was nothing. The texture was wrong, too thick, and the taste was alien. He nearly gagged but forced himself to swallow. The hunger, however, did not stop. It only grew stronger, and soon the taste began to change, evolving as his body adapted, as if his very cells recognized what was happening. His vision blurred for a moment, and then the world seemed to snap into sharper focus. He felt more, stronger, faster. The energy surged through him, unlike anything he had felt before. It was like he had just been awakened from a long, unfeeling sleep. Syra watched him intently, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. There, you've learned the first step. Kyle wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, his body still trembling from the rush of power coursing through him. The hunger was sated, at least for now, but something deeper had been awakened. His body felt alive in a way it hadn't before. Now, Syra said, her voice low and commanding, we begin the real training. The next few days felt like a blur to Kyle. He could barely remember the nights, lost in the haze of hunger, power, and the overwhelming sensations that kept him tethered to his new reality. Syra, though ever calm and composed, had kept him busy. She had thrown him into the deep end, pushing him to the edge of his endurance, training him with a sort of relentless patience. Now standing in front of her, Kale felt like a coiled spring. His body was strong, too strong, it seemed for his own good. The hunger was still there, but it had become a constant hum beneath his skin. He'd learned to feed on the strange creatures Sarah provided, and sometimes on the people she led him to. It was easier now. The urges were more familiar, like a long-lost friend. But something else was building, a connection between him and Syra that was as strange as it was undeniable. Feel it? Sarah's voice broke through his thoughts, her eyes locked on his. That pull? Cal's jaw tightened. He could feel it, of course. It wasn't just physical. It was something deeper, something more insidious. When she was near, when she touched him, even just a glance, it was like the world tilted. He felt hers. He nodded, not trusting his voice to say what was on his mind. Good, Syra said with a smile, her voice soothing as always. Now that you understand your body, we'll start working on control. You'll need it, warrior. Otherwise, you'll be a slave to the hunger. I'm not a slave, Kyle said sharply, though he couldn't help but wonder how much of himself was already slipping away. Syra tilted her head, her eyes gleaming. Not yet, but you will be if you don't learn to master it, and yourself. She gestured to a table in the corner, one filled with various tools, syringes, and small containers filled with dark liquid. Today we're going to test your reflexes, not just physical but mental. You need to be able to suppress the hunger long enough to think, to plan. You need to learn how to control yourself, or you'll lose your mind. Cal eyed the table, his senses immediately heightening at the sight of the dark liquid. The hunger stirred, but he shoved it down, forcing himself to focus. What do I need to do? Sarah picked up one of the syringes, her fingers moving with practiced ease. You're going to need to control your bloodlust, Kyle. That's your first step. Kale blinked. Bloodlust? Seriously? Don't look so surprised, she said, her smile still curiously soft. You're a vampire now, warrior. It comes with the territory. You won't have to kill to feed forever, but you need to get used to the idea of testing your limits, to see how long you can go without the hunger taking over. She pressed the syringe into a vial and extracted the dark liquid. Cal watched in silent horror, his stomach twisting in response. It didn't look like blood. It looked wrong. What is that? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Don't worry, Cyrus said, sensing his unease. This is part of the training. It's a compound I've been working on for years. It will simulate blood, But it's more than just a substitute. It'll test your control. Kyle swallowed, not sure if he should be grateful or terrified. He didn't even have time to think about it before Sarah handed him the syringe. "Drink it," she instructed. "Slowly, let it settle. Your body needs to adjust." He hesitated for only a second before taking the syringe from her. As he pressed it against his skin, he could feel the sharp, cold sting of the needle before the liquid entered his veins. Almost immediately, he felt a wave of heat flood through him, his pulse quickening. It wasn't like blood. It was heavier, thicker, more potent. His head spun for a moment, a strange clarity coming over him, followed by a dark wave of hunger that hit him harder than anything he had felt before. He could feel his muscles tightening, his fangs lengthening in his mouth, his vision blurring around the edges. But he couldn't let it consume him. "Focus, Kale." Sarah's voice was cool, calm, like an anchor. "Control it. Don't let it take over." He breathed deeply, trying to push the hunger aside. He felt like he was being pulled apart from the inside, like something in his chest was trying to claw its way free. His hands trembled as he set the syringe down on the table. "I'm trying," he growled, barely able to keep his voice from cracking. Sarah stepped closer, her fingers brushing against his arm, sending a shiver through his body. "I know you are, but this is the first test. You're learning to control your impulses, to delay the hunger. Think of it like holding your breath underwater. You'll be able to do it for a while, but eventually you'll have to surface." Kale clenched his fists, teeth gritted, as the feeling in his chest twisted. He could feel his body rebelling. He wanted to rip through the walls, tear into the closest source of life, the creature in the tank, the blood. He could taste it, smell it, feel it like a living thing inside his throat, begging for release. But Sarah's words kept him grounded, like a lifeline. Focus. He had to focus. If he didn't, he would lose it all. Minutes passed. The hunger didn't abate, but it began to subside, just enough for Cal to regain his sense of self. His breath slowed, and the world began to settle back into place. Sarah didn't say anything at first. She just watched him, her eyes scanning every movement, every twitch. "Well done," she finally said, her voice low. "It's not easy, is it?" Kyle let out a slow, shaky breath, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. It's not easy at all." "That's why you're here," Sarah said, her tone soft, but carrying an edge of something deeper, something more dangerous. "To learn how to be strong enough to control it." Kyle shook his head, his thoughts still spinning. He didn't know if he was getting stronger or if he was just losing himself little by little. But for the first time since he'd been turned, he felt like he might have a chance at survival, if he could get this right. But survival alone wasn't enough anymore. He wasn't sure what was driving him now, whether it was the hunger or something else. Something deeper. Something that had taken root inside him the moment Sarah's fangs had pierced his neck. His eyes met hers, and for a moment he saw the truth in her gaze. There was no going back. "You're getting it," she said, smiling just a little. "But there is still so much more to learn." Kale exhaled, his body still shaking. "I'm ready." He didn't know if he was, but there was only one way to find out. The first time Kale truly felt the weight of his new nature was on the third night of his training. He was standing on the edge of a ruined bridge, the dark sky stretching endlessly above, and below, the city of Eldrith sprawled like a wounded beast. Lights flickered from the scattered buildings, faint and far apart, like dying stars. It was an old city, one that had witnessed both the best and worst of the human race. Sarah had taken him here for one simple reason: to test his instincts. "The hunger will always be with you," she'd said, her voice serious, "but you must learn to harness it." Kyle wasn't sure how to respond to that. The hunger had become more of a presence than an urge. It didn't feel like a craving anymore. It felt like a part of him, like a strange new limb, something he couldn't ignore. His muscles twitched with the need for action, his senses alive and pulsing with power. "You think too much," Sarah said from behind him, her voice laced with amusement. "Relax. This isn't a test of strength, it's a test of restraint." "Restraint?" Cal repeated the word as if it had no meaning. He turned to look at her, his eyes narrowing. "You're asking me to restrain this?" He held his arm out, feeling the latent power vibrating under his skin. I'm not exactly human anymore. No, you're not. Sierra's smile was faint but warm. You're something better, or you will be if you get this right. He sighed, leaning against the metal railing. He wasn't sure why he had let her bring him here, but a small part of him trusted her. She knew what she was talking about, even if her methods were unconventional. Suddenly, there was a rustling sound from the darkness below. Kyle tensed, his senses sharpening instinctively. His eyes narrowed as the shadows shifted, and from the darkness emerged a figure, human, but not quite. Its eyes glowed faintly, and it moved with a grace that didn't belong to a normal person. Sierra's voice broke the silence. We call them night walkers. They're not quite alive, but not dead either. They exist in a state of limbo, like a shadow in the corner of your vision. Cal's heart pounded in his chest, his body responding to the figure below with an immediate surge of hunger. His eyes darted to Sarah, who was watching him carefully, her expression unreadable. What do you want me to do? Kyle asked, his voice low, controlled. Kill it? Sarah shook her head. Number, you'll need to control yourself, Kale. The Nightwalker's a test. It's not about whether you can kill it. It's about whether you can resist the urge to. Kyle's gaze returned to the creature below. The Nightwalker had stopped moving and was now staring directly at him, its glowing eyes unnerving in the way they didn't blink. Kyle could feel his pulse quicken, his teeth itching to sink into flesh. Isn't this the same thing you've been teaching me? He asked, his voice hoarse. Control. Sierra smiled. Exactly. You'll learn to feel the hunger, but not give in to it. Now focus. Kyle took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions swirling within him. The Nightwalker's gaze was like a magnet, pulling at his senses, making him feel something primal, something deep within his chest. His body wanted to pounce, to strike with the force of a beast. His fangs ached with the desire to rip through skin. It was almost unbearable, but he resisted, focusing on Syra's words, on her presence beside him. Slowly, he let the hunger swell within him, but didn't let it overtake him. He kept his thoughts clear, his body still. The Nightwalker moved again, closer now, its head tilted as if to examine him more closely. It moved like smoke, fluid and shifting, yet it didn't make a sound. Cal felt his muscles twitch, wanting to spring into action, but he kept himself still, breathing steadily. That's it, Sierra murmured, her voice almost approving. You're learning. Cal didn't answer, his focus entirely on the creature. He could feel it now, the way it was looking at him. The Nightwalker was aware of him. It was testing him, just as Sierra had. It was a challenge, and Cal had no intention of failing. Without warning, the Nightwalker lunged, its movements quick and almost too fast to track. Cale's body reacted instinctively, but it wasn't a violent reaction. He sidestepped, using the same agility Sierra had taught him, and grabbed the Nightwalker by the arm, stopping its movement with a firm grip. For a moment, everything was still. The creature struggled, but Cale's hold was firm. Sierra stepped closer, her eyes glinting with a mixture of pride and amusement. Well done. You didn't give in. Kyle exhaled sharply, trying to steady his racing heart. His hand was still locked around the Nightwalker's arm, and he could feel it squirming beneath his grip, but the hunger had not overtaken him. Not yet. Now hold it, Syra said. Don't kill it, don't hurt it, just hold it. Kyle stared down at the creature, its glowing eyes still fixed on him. He felt a strange sense of power in his grip. For the first time, he understood what Syra had meant by control. He wasn't just holding the Nightwalker, he was holding himself. The hunger swirled again, like an undercurrent beneath his skin. But this time, it wasn't the hunger to kill. It was something else, something darker. He wanted to devour the creature, to feel its essence flood his body. But instead, he squeezed his eyes shut and pushed the thought aside. Enough, Syra said after a moment. Let it go. Cal released the Nightwalker, stepping back. The creature seemed to melt back into the shadows, retreating to the dark corners of the city where it belonged. You passed, Syra said, her tone soft, almost gentle. It wasn't about the creature, it was about you. Kyle nodded slowly, his chest still heaving with the effort to keep control. He wasn't sure how to feel about this, about everything that had happened. He wasn't sure how to feel about himself. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," he admitted quietly, his voice hoarse. "I don't know if I want to be this thing." Sierra studied him for a moment, her gaze intense. Then she spoke, her voice softer than usual. "You don't have to want to be this. But you are this now, Kale. And if you want to survive, you'll have to learn to live with it. Embrace it." The words felt heavier than they had any right to. Embrace it. Cal wanted to say something, wanted to protest, to argue, but there was nothing left to say. The hunger was part of him now, and there was no way to turn back. Sarah turned away then, her voice carrying over her shoulder as she walked away. "I'll be watching, Cal. The real test is just beginning." Cal watched her go, a strange emptiness settling in his chest. He wasn't sure what came next, but whatever it was, he knew it would test him in ways he hadn't even begun to understand. And the worst part, he wasn't sure if he was ready. The first real test came 2 weeks later. Kyle had spent those weeks with Syra, constantly pushing the limits of his new strength, his new senses, and his new cravings. Each night, she made him confront the hunger. Sometimes it was as simple as holding back when a victim stood before him, struggling against the urge to drink, to take, to consume. Other times it was far more complicated, hunting, tracking, and surprisingly, evading other creatures like him. Vampires who were far less forgiving than Syra. But tonight was different. Tonight, Syra had made it clear that they were going to test something much more critical, something much more dangerous. "There's a ship," she said, looking at him with a serious expression. "A transport ship coming from the eastern colonies. It'll land in the outskirts of Eldrith in a few hours. The passengers aboard are valuable." Cal raised an eyebrow. He had seen ships like these before. Traders, diplomats, and the occasional scientist. Most of them were insignificant to him, but he could tell from Syra's tone that this one wasn't business as usual. "What's so important about this ship?" he asked, already feeling the growing weight of anticipation. Syra's gaze hardened. "It's carrying something very special, something that could tip the balance of power on this planet. You'll have to get close to the ship without being detected, and when the time comes, you'll do what you do best, feed." Cal felt a chill run down his spine. "Feed? On who?" "The passengers," she replied bluntly. "You're to leave no trace. Just make sure no one escapes with their life." It was the first time Sierra had ever asked him to kill for the sake of their mission. Up until now, they'd been hunting creatures, testing limits. But now, this was something else entirely. This was a human ship with human passengers. They weren't the faceless monsters he had grown used to. Cal turned away, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon, where the first lights of the transport ship could be seen. Tiny pinpricks of light in the distance. "And what happens if I fail?" Sierra stepped closer to him, her voice uncharacteristically soft. "If you fail, you'll have to live with the consequences. I'm not here to coddle you, Kyle. I'm here to make sure you're ready for what's coming." Kyle swallowed hard. What was coming? The answer was as elusive as it was terrifying. But this mission was the test. He could feel it in his bones. "What exactly are we dealing with here?" he asked, glancing over his shoulder at her. She smiled faintly. "You'll find out soon enough." The next few hours were filled with tension as Syra and Kale stalked through the darkened streets of Eldrith, navigating the narrow alleys and hidden pathways that led them to the outskirts. The city's familiar sounds of life, footsteps, shouts, distant machinery, seemed muffled now, as if the world was holding its breath. Kyle's instincts were on edge, a sharp awareness of every movement, every whisper in the wind. The hunger gnawed at him, but tonight there was something more, something lurking just beyond the edges of his mind. When they reached the landing site, Kale could see the ship more clearly now. It was an impressive thing, sleek, metallic, with faint glowing runes etched into the surface. A cargo ship, yes, but there was something unusual about it. He could feel it in the air, the thick tension that hung like a storm before the rain. Syra crouched beside him, her voice barely a whisper. "We'll wait until they have disembarked. Once they're on the ground, we strike." Kyle nodded, his mind already running through the possibilities. He had been trained to strike with precision, to choose his moments carefully. But tonight would be different. The passengers were human, yes, but there was something else, something hidden, and he didn't like the feeling in his gut. This wasn't just about feeding, it was about something bigger. Minutes passed, stretching into hours. The ship's engines hummed as it touched down, and Cale felt the faint tremor in the ground beneath him. As the hatch of the ship opened, a small group of figures emerged, shrouded in darkness, moving quickly toward the landing platform. Their faces were hidden beneath hooded cloaks, and their footsteps made no sound as they moved. Kyle could hear their voices, but their words were indistinguishable, muffled by the wind. "That's them," Sierra murmured. "The ones you'll need to deal with." Kyle's grip tightened around the handle of the blade she had given him, his senses on high alert. He could feel the pulse of the human passengers, their blood rushing through their veins, quick and warm. It was so close now, too close. He could almost taste the sweetness of their lifeblood in the air, a heady aroma that made his mouth water. He fought the urge to step forward. They were still moving, still oblivious to their surroundings. He could hear the faint sounds of chatter now, and the sight of the passengers, humans just like him, suddenly felt wrong. These people were unaware of what was about to happen to them, unaware of the predatory gaze that had been trained on them for the last several hours. "You're going to need to move quickly," Sierra whispered again, her voice tight. "Strike hard before anyone gets away." Cal didn't answer. He didn't trust his voice right now. The hunger was rising again, faster this time. His fangs itched, his body ached with the need for blood. He could see it, smell it, almost feel it inside him. And yet, in the back of his mind, a small voice whispered, "What if these people don't deserve this?" Sierra's gaze locked onto him, piercing and unwavering. "You're better than this, Cale. Don't hesitate." With a deep breath, Kyle stepped out of the shadows, moving with the silent grace of a predator. His footsteps were light, calculated, and he moved swiftly toward the group. His hands were steady, despite the frantic rush of his thoughts. He could hear the human heartbeats now, louder, closer, each thrum of life like a drumbeat, calling to him. He reached the first passenger, a man dressed in dark, worn clothing. He grabbed him by the shoulder, yanking him backward with a smooth motion. The man's eyes went wide, but it was too late. Cale's fangs sank into his neck in a blur of motion. The taste was almost overwhelming, rich, metallic, and warm. But before Cale could pull back, something strange happened. The man's blood didn't feel right. It was too thick, too heavy, like it was fighting back against him. Kyle pulled away, disoriented, and found himself staring into the eyes of the other passengers, who had suddenly stopped in their tracks, their gazes fixed on him. Sierra's voice, sharp and cold, cut through the air. "They're not human, Kyle. They never were." The hunger roared inside him again, fiercer than ever. But this time it wasn't the same. This wasn't just bloodlust. It was something darker, something far more dangerous. And Cal realized, with a sinking feeling in his chest, that this was only the beginning of a far bigger game. The ship's engines had stopped long ago, and the hum of the universe outside had become a distant memory. Cale stood at the center of the control room, staring down at the console in front of him, his hands resting on the cold surface. He felt the weight of everything pressing in on him. The hunger, the guilt, the power that surged through his body like an unstoppable tide. His transformation was complete, but what did that mean? Where did he fit now, in this galaxy full of unknowns? Behind him, Sierra leaned against the doorway, her arms crossed. Her presence was silent but undeniable, like a shadow that refused to leave. "How does it feel?" she asked, her voice unusually soft, almost contemplative. Cale didn't answer at first. Instead, he gazed out the panoramic window, watching as the stars streaked by in endless streaks of light. He had lived for so long under the illusion of certainty, fighting battles, carrying out missions, never questioning the why. Now everything had shifted. The world he had known was gone. There was no going back. He was no longer a human warrior, no longer just Cale. He was something else entirely. "I feel different," he said slowly, his voice low. "But it's not just the hunger. It's more like I've become Part of something bigger. Like I'm not just a man, but a force that can't be stopped. Sira nodded from behind him. That's the price of immortality. The hunger is just the beginning. It's how you use that power that will define you. Kyle thought about that for a moment, his gaze drifting to the dark expanse outside. I've killed people, he said quietly, more to himself than to her. Not just monsters, not just things. People. Sira moved closer, her presence almost imperceptible. You've killed to survive, but you didn't kill for the sake of killing. There's a difference, Kale. You've been given a choice now, a chance to use that power for something more. Kyle turned to face her. There was a fire in his eyes now, one he hadn't known he possessed. And what do you want me to do with this power? What do you want me to become? Sira's smile was faint but knowing. That's the question, isn't it? What you do with it is up to you. I can guide you, but I can't make that choice for you. What I can tell you is this. You're not alone anymore. He looked at her, the weight of her words settling over him. In that moment, he realized how much he had changed. He had been a warrior, a soldier, living and dying by the code of battle. But now he was something else. He was part of a new order, a new world that transcended the rules he had once lived by. But the ship, Kyle began, turning his attention back to the ship's controls. What happened to the passengers? The ones They're safe, Sira interrupted, her tone more assured now. You didn't kill them. Not this time. And not because you couldn't, but because you chose not to. A strange, unfamiliar sense of relief washed over Kale. He had expected guilt, shame, regret, but instead he found peace. The hunger still gnawed at him, but it wasn't all-consuming. He could control it. He could make his own decisions. So this is it then? Kyle asked, his voice steadier now. The end of the line? Sira's lips twitched upward. Oh, it's not the end, Kyle. It's just the beginning. You've only scratched the surface of what you're capable of. There's more out there. More power, more choices, and more questions. But the difference now is that you have control over your own destiny. The sound of a door opening interrupted their conversation, and a figure stepped into the room, a tall woman with silvery hair and an air of authority about her. She was one of the passengers from the ship, though her features were far from human. Her eyes, glowing with an ethereal light, met Kyle's with a knowing gaze. Kyle, she said, her voice soft but commanding, Sira has told me much about you. I see the potential in you. But there is something more you need to understand. Kyle's eyes narrowed slightly, but he said nothing. His instincts were on high alert, but he had learned to trust Sira. If this woman was here, it meant she was important. She was part of the bigger picture. What is it? He asked, his tone guarded but curious. The woman stepped closer, her gaze steady. You may think that the power you've gained is yours to control, but there are others. Others who want it, who would kill to possess it. The galaxy is full of factions, each with their own agenda. You will have to choose who you align yourself with and who you fight against. Kyle felt a shiver run down his spine. He had suspected as much. There was no way that something as dangerous as what he had become would go unnoticed. He would be hunted, targeted, controlled. You don't have to do this alone, the woman continued. We have a place for you, a place where you can learn to control not just your hunger, but your power, a place where you can stand with others like you. Kyle met her gaze. He could see the sincerity in her eyes, but there was something else there too. Something darker, more complex. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Sira's voice broke the silence. I've trained you, Kale. I've helped you find the balance. But this is something else entirely. The choice is yours. For a long moment, Kyle didn't speak. His mind raced, his heart pulsed with the remnants of the hunger. But this time, it wasn't an uncontrollable beast. This time, it was just another part of him, something he could keep at bay. He thought back to the last few weeks, his battles, his growth, the way he had learned to control himself. He remembered the faces of those he had saved, the way he had chosen not to feed when he could have. I don't know if I'll ever be fully human again, Kyle said quietly. But I'm not a monster either. The woman nodded as though she had been expecting this answer. Then you are ready to face what comes next. Kyle stood tall, the weight of his transformation no longer a burden, but a responsibility. His journey wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. The stars outside seemed to shimmer a little brighter now. He wasn't alone. He had a place, a purpose. And for the first time since his rebirth, Kyle felt the stirring of something else within him. Hope. The galaxy awaited. The end.